issues of human rights. Human rights. Human rights, they have the right to education, have the right to housing, have the right to health. What are they talking about? For someone that doesn't know, or for someone that will just think everything is okay, yet we've seen. There was a time we had a conversation in terms of civil society. What were we talking about then? Yes, in terms of how best civil society is given an opportunity to teach and the support.
Good afternoon. I think maybe just to say my name is from Success Capital Organization, which is a youth-led organization that works in the nexus of human rights and sustainable development.
Okay. We're talking, State of the Nation address.
Yes.
A number of factors were touched on, some were not.
Yes.
Some people are saying, we need to see them, we need to hear them. They did talk about agriculture.
Yes.
Excuse me, to say they need to see produce from the farmers.
Yes.
Agriculture can also do and all the like. But you're talking human rights, and there's where you end. You're not talking to people with disabilities.
Yes.
You're not talking to people that are from disadvantaged ethnic groups. You're not talking to the LGBTQ community that we have within our country. You're not talking to Bahudi, Babalente.
Yes.
You're not talking to the unemployed.
So, I mean, I think it's very important also to acknowledge human rights in basic layman terms.
Yeah. Number one.
And when we're talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, every single person who is born on this earth is entitled to rights. And so I think for a very, very long time, a lot of people wouldn't understand or know how best to exercise their right.
Yes.
But of course, we saw people exercise their democratic right by voting, number one. Number two, of course, we saw people continuously engaging by protesting, because that is right? The freedom of association and assembly.
Yes.
And so I think it's very important for us to just be very clear what I said, right? And so if you are recognizing what someone else's well-being beyond just mine needs to be guaranteed not only in our constitution, but within the context of our systems, our institutions,
yes.
All of these need to be respected, and it is the responsibility of the state to not only promote, but also to strengthen and safeguard these rights, not just civil society. Yes.
As you're saying, the state needs to safeguard. Do they do this on their own? Do they do this hand in hand with civil society, and also, or do they say no? Let's forget civil society. We're engaging the people. Doing groundwork, capacity building. But where do you come in? Where do they come in into your plan? Where do you come into their plan? Where does the community come into their plan?
So in an ideal state, you wouldn't need civil society, right? An ideal state essentially means that people's needs are catered for, people's lives are of dignity, and more importantly, everyone can live the kind of life that is fulfilling and that is of their aspirations.
Yes.
And so we know that that's not the most ideal, right? In any country context, even the most wealthy.
Even the most wealthy, yes.
So I think we need to recognize the important role that all stakeholders, mind you, civil society also includes media, because it is about educating a nation, basically.
Which is true.
So, for example, in a lot of people, when they're, let's say, when they're being raised, and then maybe there's some form of punishment, corporal punishment, right?
Yes.
Because violence is normalized in that home, you can imagine what happens. The only form of discipline might be some form of violence with their children or even in relationships, right? And so essentially, when we're talking about the responsibility of the state is in making sure human rights don't just exist in a vacuum. You need legislature, you need institutions that can promote and protect, right?
Yes.
And so essentially, when we're talking about that one household, we need the law to make sure that it protects children, number one. We need the law to make sure that it protects victims or survivors of violence, such that they can get a remedy or they can get some form of restitution for the harm that's done.
That has been done.
Right.
But I mean, okay, yes, your choice of words or violence. Violent. I get, but what you're saying is it's what's instilled on this person to say, for me to remedy a situation, there's some form of punishment that needs to be done to this person that has done wrong to me. But now, for the force has to be increased, and that is where you're saying yes, the violence comes in. But then we look at now the way forward. I mean, the president did say they have 100 days that they will be, that want to be. Personally, I feel 100 is a little.
Really?
Yeah, I feel 100 is a little. Putting into context, looking at where we came from, they have to clean the house up first.
I am in agreement.
Yes.
However, I will highlight.
Cleaning up the house means I want to do all these things. I have to put them on hold to remedy the situation. Then once it's okay, then I can say, okay, how do I then fit this in there, fit in this there, fit this in there? Because what I'm talking to is issues of, we've seen where, as you're saying, human rights have to be dignified. We've seen schools that are dilapidated to a point where because the teacher fears it's either me being injured or these kids, so it's better we're outside. There's people that are not, they are working, but they're not really getting paid what they should be getting paid. So how
So you are saying that people must be patient with their rights. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying patience with the rights. What I'm saying is we can't be patient as voters. We changed the government because we're tired of what we're being given. Let's put in someone that's coming to give us something better. But that person has nothing to give us because that other one took everything.
I will agree with that on one end, but the person has the power of the law, the power of the three arms of government to make things happen. And so I think for me, in looking at a state that has basically denied, for example, the rights of indigenous people, their ancestral land, their right to water, them being relocated forcibly, essentially be reversed by basically a presidential directive to allow one of them to be buried on their ancestral land. That already tells you about the kind of power that the president has, right? And when you are in the highest country in the office, I assume that you have possibly the best skills and the best brains in the land, and possibly even outside the land, that can help you devise a plan. And so for me, I think not only is it a good mark, 100 days, to say, you know what, we might have achieved certain things, we've progressed on certain levels, which is far much better than many other African presidents, if I can say that. And I don't even want to make that as a measure, because we've got poor levels or poor records of African presidents, right? But I think if I say that in the context of, for example, the African Union's Agenda 2063, where we know already the average age of African presidents is 81, and the median age of Africa's population is 19. That's like 2 generational gaps.
And it says a lot.
It does.
I think what you're driving to is something. It's a conversation that we once had. What we're saying, we need to move away from this motsadi system.
And that's why each and every vote is equal.
Yes.
I get it. It's not what when you pay what kind of tax can I guy.
Could even the guy that works in benefit.
Yes.
Could have been the difference between you and I.
Exactly.
But the treatment of that person
is far different. Yes.
From yours and mine.
And that's the reason why we appreciate a human rights-based economy, a human rights-based government, because that's very unusual, to be honest.
True.
Even in the most, for a lot of world leaders happen to have gone to law school, right? And it's like they don't know about human rights, because they know that human rights can be aspirational, because they're very difficult to attain, but also because if your human rights are not respected, you can take them to court.
No, you can.
So for me, what that says, the 100 days, for me, what that says, the human rights approach, is essentially sitting there and saying what the personal is political, just as political as, for example, the Cabo Commission, when the Vice President and Minister of Agriculture at the time were implicated in land grabbing in Mogoditsane. The personal is political, just as we have seen so many different allegations of those who are in proximity to power who abused and misused state resources. The personal is political, even when you sit and say, you know what, I'm going to respect each and every Motswana's right to participate in this country's governance, to participate in this country's economy. And what does that look like? It looks like, obviously, dignified jobs. It looks like making sure you're addressing underemployment. And I think for me, it's also recognizing when you want to achieve something like universal health coverage, it means you're addressing out-of-pocket costs. I shouldn't be able to go to one facility just to get screened, and then I have to go to another one for a referral, and then wait for and then wait for 3-4 months if I need a surgery. So you're saying each and every person must have the same kind of health care, quality and skilled service that can ensure that the individual can attain the highest possible of possibility of health and well-being. And I think for me, that is what is, I guess, the fundamental principle, how do we guard human rights, especially in a democratic society like
I take you now to the youth.
Yes.
Banana Bubble.
Yes.
Where a lot of social ills we've seen through them over the years.
Yes.
Not to say number, we've seen it fluctuating.
Yes.
But now substance abuse in our whole, I think in the last 10 years, if I'm wrong with that child also. How best then do we then say the role of civil society that can play in guiding and molding, not necessarily to say specifically but where they look, they see, oh no, Duma is doing this, Puffs is doing this, Roberta is doing this, why am I the only one doing this? Maybe I need to get in this. How best can civil society then play a role in that, to say, having to see, as you're saying, the median age is 90. They're still young, impressionable. Yeah, no, how about a 43-year-old guy that's driving a BMW? He doesn't know where this person got that money. It's generational wealth, or what knows what.
It's very important, because what you're flagging is an important element, because 25,000 students dropped out of school between 2012 and 2022. So that already tells you the extent of dropouts, and I think that might also be underestimated, because data collection, 25,000.
So that's 2.5 every year.
Yes, basically. And I think for me this is very, very worrisome, because we're talking about young people who are supposed to be the demographic dividend, who are supposed to be the future labor workforce. There's a reason why, for example, in Africa, youth is up until age 35 compared to other nations. This is also because, to some extent, they are deemed to be able to be self-sufficient and not depend on their parents, and be productive, in inverted commas, members of society. And I think we know that because so many people, they graduate at the age of 25 or 26. Some individuals become, young mothers and so forth. And so there are so many other hurdles and barriers that we need to sort of recognize. And this is also not to absolve our history in the context of colonialism, in that Africa was deeply underdeveloped. And so in bringing that, addressing your question, we must also recognize what a substance use is often an alternative to distraction from your troubles, from stress, from deteriorated mental health, from being unemployed, from dropping out of school, from not having no means for being productive, right?
GBV.
And I think for me, and also perpetuating GBV to some extent, although there are many other influences. And so I think for me, it's also sitting there and recognizing that we need certain state interventions. What can they look like? In as much as civil society has been assisting with rehabilitation centers, we also know as a higher middle income country, civil society is not able to get the kind of resources that is needed to provide the adequate services to address the social ill like you speak of.
Okay,
yes.
So in essence what you're talking to is let there be funding.
That's one.
For civil societies. Also, I guess,
you need structural interventions.
Well,
right?
Definitely.
You need, for example, people frown upon the technical college. They don't value technical colleges as much.
Yes.
People make fun of them socially. Meanwhile, when you look at other, former socialist states in Europe that are thriving now, you find someone already developed technical skills at a high school level. And so why can't we then take those individuals who maybe they're not necessarily gifted academically as a result of their home environment, that corporal punishment, or as a result of even just not necessarily, or maybe they have intellectual disabilities. Yes. And so maybe these are individuals who can learn something by hand, whether it's artisans and other
example.
Crafts.
Zambia, Zimbabwe.
Yes.
I think how it's if not Form 3, Form 5. Where you choose whether you're going to mechanics, whether you're doing carpentry, whether you're going into the agricultural sector. I don't know. I think Nigeria is in a labor army. And those are set things. What you're talking to, there's people that are gifted. Academically, no skebo. When I tell like Pythagoras theory, skebo Minela skebo blank. Skebo will design that thing.
Yes.
And as you're saying, structures that are there that need to then change, that need to be changed to talk to certain things sitting there. Because with what you're saying, 25,000. That's a lot.
It's a lot of people,
25,000 is like a whole village.
Imagine the figures of graduates that have been walking the streets.
On
top of that number, So we're literally talking about a huge youth demographic that is not allowed to fulfill their potential as a result of an elitist few, as a result of political patronage, as a result of not being able to be given gainful employment to develop their skills and to nurture their skills. And so I think for me, it's also recognizing Haribaka, a human rights-based approach, is trying to address this demographic and also recognizing that youth are not a monolithic. They're not homogeneous. And so how do you then recognize the talents that individuals have and stimulate and create a kind of enabling environment for young people to thrive? For example, there are others who have art, right? Yes. Why do we not have similar incubation systems that can develop their art for it to be exported, especially because it's very easy in the context of social media and being connected, right? Why can't you, for example, have sign language as an official language? Because there's a whole demographic of people who are deaf, who are not included, and who have to access certain government services, who don't necessarily get the same kind of opportunities or quality of education because it is not an official sign language. So I think there's so many different variances where I think ultimately when we're talking about a human rights-based approach, it's allowing citizens to participate in the democratic trajectory of the country. So one, the structures are already there in terms of quota systems. I'm not sure if people will be able to attend, quota systems, but we're talking about consultation processes, right? We're talking about engaging people to actually help contribute in some of the solutions. And so, yes, you don't have to do it alone as government. You can partner with civil society. You can partner with communities. There are child protection committees. There is gender machinery or gender committees at different local, municipal or city council levels. And these are all structures that are there because they know that those are individuals who are on the ground. Those are representatives or gatekeepers, so to speak, that can allow for state interventions to be scaled and amplified.
Jimmy, we're out of time. we need, I think, the whole day. But there's a lot that can be done. We thank you for your time. We wish you all the best with what you're doing. Please do keep coming back to us. Ask for assistance where you can. We'll see how best we can help. As you did say, we are obviously on radio we are the voice of the voiceless, as they do say. But in our own personal spaces as well, nothing should take anything away from you. As you're saying, our social structures, 2.5 every because perhaps you carry habasha percent to me hanka mori kana ke baro hey you gonna then let me just keep away. Hey, but we do hope for the best. So we hope to see what 100 days brings for us. We do hope we will get the answers, and the 100 days becomes 50 days, and 50 days becomes 25 days, and then in the whole because as you've been saying, there's people that live in various places, some hard to reach. So what's 2-3 days I don't have big but thank you for your time, sir. As we wrap up the show, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Papani Kamsa.